there was a show-long storyline. And that show-long storyline was that Brock Lesnar finally showed up to work. But he refused to go out to the ring. So he flew all the way to Miami, from Canada, or wherever the hell he's living these days, just to sit in the back and read magazines throughout the entire show. But he refused to actually go out to the ring. Because you see, the story is that he's lazy and he doesn't care about the WWE universe and he doesn't care about anything. And you should all cheer for Roman Reigns or something to that effect. That's the basic story that they're trying to tell here. And they showed Lesnar sitting on a couch in the back reading a magazine called The Backwoodsman, which is in fact a real magazine. According to Wikipedia, it features a bunch of how-to guides and frequent subjects include making canoes. I would watch a show about Brock Lesnar trying to build a canoe myself. I think that should be on the network. Building canoes, homemade welders, black powder cannons, beer, and clothing. Those are some of the subjects covered in The Backwoodsman. I thought he was just reading one magazine throughout the entire show. There was a second magazine called American Frontiersman, and here I thought Brock, typically sat at home reading Us Weekly and Good Housekeeping. So I guess I learned something on Monday. But after Roman Reigns called Brock a bitch at the beginning of the show, Paul Heyman went up to Brock. Heyman was doing his damnedest to try to get Brock to come out to the ring. He was begging him. He was imploring this man, please go out to the ring. My job is on the line here. And he asked him at first, he goes, Brock, did you hear what Roman had to say about you? And this is when Brock made the comment where he said to Paul Heyman, no, Paul, why would I watch this show? I don't watch the show, Paul. And then later on, he told Heyman to go get him a medium-well steak with a baked potato and steamed broccoli. Heyman begged him to go out to the ring because Kurt Angle threatened to terminate Paul Heyman's WWE contract if he didn't. And, he made a comment, oh, because we're friends. Just do it because we're friends. Please go out to the ring. And that's when Brock grabbed Paul. He said, we are not friends. You work for me. Go to the ring and do your job. By the way, the first thing I noticed when I saw Brock on this show was that he is clearly taking that USADA testing very seriously. He's on that Hulk Hogan 1993 diet right now. Which leads us to the main event angle, which was Kurt Angle and Baron Corbin coming out, and Angle telling Paul Heyman, look, you better produce your client, because if you don't, it's going to be his last night on Raw, it'll be your last night on Raw. And Heyman was on his hands and knees, and he was begging for his job, and finally... And by the way, in the midst of all this, Kurt Angle referred to Brock Lesnar as the worst Universal Champion of all time. And Brock did come out. He did finally come out. Heyman was very happy. He had this big smile on his face. I knew he would come out. Lesnar comes in, and he ends up giving Kurt Angle an F5, just like old times. Probably the last F5 we'll ever see him give Kurt Angle. And he left him laying. Kind of intimidated Corbin, where Corbin left the ring before he could be F5'd. And Heyman he is on cloud nine here, man. He is just smug as shit. He's laughing. He's happy. And so Brock grabs him. He grabs Paul. He assaults Paul Heyman for the first time, I think, since the two of them came back together all these years ago. And he grabs Paul basically by the head, puts him down on the ground. And Paul is saying, I can't breathe. Brock, let me go. I can't breathe. And so Lesnar, basically, he's an uncaged beast. And even after the show, he did the same thing. He assaulted Mike Rome, who tried to interview him backstage, which just sounds like a terrible idea. I don't know why you would approach a wild Brock Lesnar after what he had just done in the ring to get an interview. There's no other way that could have ended other than Mike Rome being assaulted. And look, I am all for Brock Lesnar going on a rampage and killing people and all that kind of stuff, okay? But I also thought that the Brock Lesnar stuff on this show was a nice little burial of their own product. Because when Brock Lesnar, the character, goes on TV and says that he doesn't watch the show, and you know for a fact that he does not watch the show in real life either, you cannot tell me that this is not art imitating life. So when he says this, and then I see tons of tweets and posts online agreeing with him, agreeing with the sentiment of, why would he watch the show? The show is so bad, why would he watch it? That's not the way I'd have my champion referring to my show. Where is the value in having Kurt Angle call Brock Lesnar the worst Universal Champion of all time, and then having Roman Reigns beat him at Summerslam? Where's the value in that for Roman? So let's say Roman beats him. Now what? He just beat a man who Kurt Angle called the worst champion we've ever had. Is that supposed to be some kind of big accomplishment when Roman Reigns finally beats him now? Everything they have tried thus far has been a complete failure. They protected the F5 for an entire year. Not one person kicked out of that move. Not Samoa Joe, not Braun Strowman, not AJ Styles. No one. Why? To keep it special. So that when Reigns kicked out of it 6 times at WrestleMania, it would be a big deal. Only for Vince McMahon to turn around and change his mind and have Lesnar win anyway. And what happened the first time that Roman kicked out of that F5 at WrestleMania? Nothing. Nobody cared. It went over like Ric Flair did in all the matches he ever had with Hulk Hogan, which is to say, it didn't. So here we are again, ready for Reigns Lesnar 3 or 4 or 5, I've lost track already, in Brooklyn. What do you think is going to happen when they get into the ring that night? That's bad enough. Now we have the narrative that Brock Lesnar is an undeserving champion. He is the worst champion in history of the show. What a great way to build up your SummerSlam main event. What a great victory it'll be for Roman Reigns in Brooklyn if he wins at SummerSlam. That's my biggest issue with this whole thing. Now there's a lot of talk about Paul Heyman after what happened on Monday night. Will he turn on Brock Lesnar? And I answered a mailbag question many, many months ago. And I'm sticking to my guns on this. Do not ever split apart Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman. If Brock leaves, if Brock legitimately is leaving, and I believe he is, right? One more match and he's going to go get ready for his UFC fight. Doesn't mean he won't come back next year, but I think this is it for Brock. If he leaves and they wanted to keep Paul Heyman around and put him with somebody else, like, for example, I don't know, Braun Strowman? That, to me, is an intriguing idea. Even though I think if Brock leaves, Heyman is as good as gone. I don't get the impression that they're all that interested, and even Heyman, I'm not so sure how interested he would be in sticking around for anybody other than Lesnar. He's got his own business. I think if Brock goes, so does Paul. But it is an intriguing idea to see maybe if Brock is leaving, if they can, and let's say Strowman gets the championship, he cashes in or whatever, and then they end up aligning Heyman with him, which may well turn him heel by default, but it's an intriguing idea. But I don't think you need to break up Lesnar and Heyman. Survivor Series 2002, right? He turned on Lesnar. He turned on Lesnar to align with Big Show. I think that would be a mistake. You can still, quote-unquote, split them by having Heyman go with somebody else if Brock is leaving. I don't want to see Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar turn on each other. They are a perfect pair, and if you're going to at some point bring Brock Lesnar back to this company, and you know there's a very good chance that he will eventually come back, he's got to be with Paul Heyman. We've already seen them do this before, and it was a mistake the first time they did it. You can have Heyman end up with somebody else, but don't have him turn on Brock Lesnar. I don't want to see them do that. I think that would be a mistake.